we've seen this administration, instead of repairing the existing highways, which we've totaled as around, let's say, in the 90s, is cumulatively totaled to about 108,000 kilometers of road. And then this government, on assuming office, commissioned the construction of a new coastal highway when the ones we have are in a sorry state. And we've seen that about 10 to 12 point something billion US dollars has been voted for this road without any due diligence on or raising the issue of maintaining the existing way. And we are there constructing a new one. And to worsen the case, you see that Nigerian government went to borrow up to about 747 million US dollars from Deutsche Bank to see to the construction of the phase of this coastal highway. Now, when you compare the kilometers of this new commissioned road, which is said to be about 700 kilometers, against the 108,000 kilometers that we have in the country already, when you commit this level of resources, 10 to 12 point something billion US dollars committed to the repairs of our existing road, I bet you will sing and praise this government to be the best in terms of repairs of roads available. But no, we'll have to start a new project when the ones that we have are a death trap. Let's not even mention the number of persons that we've lost to our highways. Deaths that are not supposed to happen, deaths that are not supposed to occur. But at the end of the day, in Nigerian Palace, we will say that Nigeria has happened to such our inability to have a maintenance culture, in our ability to tell ourselves the truth, repair existing infrastructure, rather than going to construct a new highway. Let's not even begin to mention the economic quagmire that this nation has found itself in, when we spend precious South Africa, and here we are posing as the giants of Africa with death traps of roads. So I thank the editors of the Vanguard newspaper for calling the nation's attention to these death traps that litter over all the geographical locations of this nation. What are our leaders really doing? We have senators, we have House of Rep members. What do they legislate on? We talk about declaring states of emergency in security and others. We should as well declare states of emergency on our roads, on our death trap. That way we could save lives. There are instances where drivers are meant to swerve off the road because they didn't anticipate what they encounter on the road. You cannot be able to describe that this is the condition of the road you pass through in the evening while returning in the morning. I therefore call on them and look into them promptly. Now, moving over to the issue of on the front page of the Punch, Pengasson fires back as Shetima defends Dangote. You know, it's quite unfortunate that we'll begin to talk about Pengasson and Dangote again, where we are celebrating that the federal government have been able to mediate this crisis and that the nation is now celebrating and begin to witness a return to normalcy, that the federal government are the ones again stoking this fire. The vice president, while representing the president at the economic summit, did say that Dangote refinery is an institution and a pillar of Nigeria's economic development, and therefore that Pengasson should not hold the nation to ransom. I suppose the vice president is speaking for the president in this circumstance. And why do we have to go back onto this issue? Are we chastising Pengasson for embarking on industrial action in what they've termed to be the right of the Nigerian worker to unionize? While we do not cite Pengasson, I, for one, do not think that the federal government should take us back to this crisis. If we've resolved this crisis, I suppose that the government was able to bring the weary factions to a table and agreement was reached. I believe that at this point in time, what should be done is for the federal government to see that every party honors the agreement that was entered into by the various factions, the Dangote refinery and Pengasson, and not again trying to stoke the fire of division and causing arguments. Because if you go forward, you see that the labor union Pengasson have come out to reply the president, and the president, yes, nobody can hold the nation to ransom, that the nation is above any institution or individual. The Pengasson have equally come out to tell the presidency that the nation is bigger than the presidency or any individual. These are not the rhetorics that we want to hear at this time. These are not the rhetorics that will bring in investors to invest in this economy. No. While we agree that unions, trade unions, should be very careful not to go on incessant strike, but as well, it is the prerogative of the government to see that every business concern, every organization plays by the rule. Dangote, yes, is quite needed in the Nigerian economy given the role he's been playing over the years. But that doesn't mean that Dangote as well should be allowed to contravene the rules of this nation. Pengasson, for example, has come out to claim that their members have the right to freedom of association as enshrined in the Constitution. When you look at sections of the Constitution, Section 40, Section 42, Section 34 and 35, talking about the rights of Nigerian workers to unionize and the right to freedom of association and all that, you will see, yes, that nobody should trample on this right. But that does not give labor union the prerogative to go on strike on any slight provocation. While managing this economy is for all of us, I think it's the responsibility of government, the responsibility of the trade union, and even the investors to see to it that all of us play by the book. And going forward to look at the Nation newspaper, the Nation headline, where the president has come out to tell the oil workers to avoid strike action embarked by Pengasson, were said to have lost about 200,000 barrel per day of oil production, and about 1.2 megawatts of power generation was lost throughout this period. And then, according to the president in the Nation newspaper, Dangote that will have bring it to a situation where they can compete or can augment what comes out from the Dangote refinery. Let's not get to a point where we have a mega capitalist that we cannot control, a mega capitalist that our oil consumptions and everything will be dependent on his whims and caprices. I agree quite well with the president that Dangote refinery should be protected, because should anything happen to the oil refinery at this point in time, it will generate untold hardship on the nation. Given what is happening now, the information coming from Kano is that we'll have scarcity of gas in Kano, and they are accused as well in Lagos emanating from this warning strike from Pengasson, which shouldn't be the case. These are the reasons why collectively we should see to it that Dangote refinery functions and functions properly. That Dangote refinery should not be derailed from their goal. However, while we do that and see that Dangote doesn't derail from his vision of being the #1 or the major refinery in Africa, they should equally play by the rules and see to it that things go as expected and work in tandem with international labor laws and the constitution of the country. And over to the Guardian newspaper. Nelfon keys as institution hike tuition fees, charges for profit. Now, what's the situation with our tertiary institutions? Nelfon has come out to criticize increments in fees across most of our institutions. Given the resumptions of academics, we've seen increments in fees by this higher institution, especially as regards medical courses, nursing, and law. And Nelfond has come out to criticize that these institutions have no reason to increase their fares up to the tune that we're seeing now, given that some institutions, for example, have said to have moved the school fees of nursing from around 900,000 to 2.2 million, and some medical courses, medical schools have moved from 1.3 million to 2 point something million, and these institutions still access the Nelfond loans while at the same time increasing profit. So in this instance, I think Nelfond is right in calling out the institutions for increasing their fares. But when we look at these issues critically, one may begin to ask, is it not the availability of the Nelfond loans that has given rise to these increments and institutions increasing fares in order to access more funds from the Nelfond? These are the questions that must be treated, that must be asked. And then when you look at the institutions that are increasing these fares, you will discover that this mostly, for example, I was disheartened to read the likes of Ebonyi State University being involved in this increment. Why am I disheartened? Ebonyi State, when you come to the eastern part of Nigeria, is said to be less educationally advantaged. Will have less people accessing education in Ebonyi State. And one would see, rather than increments in courses, increments in fees, that one should see the government of Ebonyi State subsidizing education in their state, rather than seeing increment. As far as I'm concerned, Ebonyi State, for instance, should declare a state of emergency in education, because when you go through the rural communities in Ebonyi State, you will see some places where there are no schools. We've read where humanitarian organizations have gone into communities to site schools in order to get more people enrolled to get formal education. And in a state like this, you're seeing the university in that state, which is government owned, increasing its fares. This is uncalled for and unacceptable for a state like Ebonyi State. There are states where you see such level of increments and that you may not beat an eyelid. But for Ebonyi State, this shouldn't be the case, where many of the citizens should be encouraged to access education up to tertiary level to increase the number of the educated, the learned in that community. And instead of doing that, we are increasing fares. In fact, when you go forward to study these studies, you begin to see that there are universities where for one person to be able to graduate from medical school from year 1 to the final year, such a student may spend up to 51 million in this Nigerian economy. Then what's the essence of having government? Personally, I feel that as far as the education sector is concerned, compared with the Nelfond that is there to cushion the fares by providing soft loans and all that, but there should be a harmony or coalition between the federal government, the institutions, to harmonize and establish let's say a given unified level of fees paid across all institutions. There has to be a regulatory body or a role that should be played by Ministry of Education, seeing to it that our fares are regulated, not where one institution wakes up one morning, then they skyrocket fees. How can an individual, if we spend 51 million naira to train one medical student in Nigeria, then at the end of the day, the issue with our health sector will continue to prevail. We will continue to see incidents of JAPA where medical doctors will collapse on duty because we are training less people to join the trade, and augment the shortfall in the number of medical personnel that we have available in the country. When we increase fares like this, we are saying that we do not need to train more health workers. And what happens in a nation where our population is on the increase, daily on the increase, we should be able to train more manpower to be able to meet the health challenge of the nation, and not continue to increase the cost of acquiring this education. And that brings me to to what is the federal government doing with the excess funds that we were saying that this country is generating. We've removed subsidy from fuel. Where are we now subsidizing? What do we subsidize in Nigeria? At least we can and should subsidize education. While I do not criticize in its entirety the provision of this loan, but without its own challenges and criticism of how these students will be able to pay these loans, given unavailability of jobs in Nigeria. But the emphasis should be that the federal government of Nigeria should be able to subsidize education. Given the economic situation of this nation, this is not a point where we will continue to increase fees, especially given the health condition of this nation. And I should call on the Federal Ministry of Education to at least begin to call every of our institutions and beginning to harmonize and have a national fee policy on tertiary education, especially when it has to do with medical courses, nursing, and perhaps law as well. This nation should increase its effort to see to it that we train more medical personnel and not increase funds at this point in time. And if I may go forward, I would call on Nelford as well to be able to publish updates on loan policies and fees threshold. In that way, the institutions who are assessing these funds will know when they are overstepping their bounds, increasing fees as well. So, education in Nigeria should be a collective effort of both the federal, the state, local, and even citizens as well. If we don't check this, if we begin to see situation where a good number of students will begin to drop out of schools. And that reminds me, what is National Association of Nigerian Students? What do they stand for in these days? In the years back, we see National Association of Nigerian Students being able to stand up in situations like this, being able to call institutions to tamper with humanity when it comes to increasing fares. One cannot ignore the fact that those who are leading our institutions, our administrators, our leaders, political leaders, opinion leaders, are men and women who enjoyed the best of this country, who were educated at a time education was more or less free in this country. It's at a period where the government of Nigeria, through the national till, was able to provide not just funding but meals for Nigerian undergraduates. And these, at the end of the day, the people who have enjoyed all these benefits are the ones today who are unable to drive policy direction on education, on harmonizing and seeing to it that the generation, even generation yet unborn, are able to access quality education. These are men who, even prior to graduation, you have organizations writing to them, calling them to come and join even before they've collected their final examination certificate as well. And then what do we have now? So, while we call on all our leaders, while we do not want to say that we'll find you guilty when it comes to replicating what enjoyed for the generation next, but we'll beckon on you to come together, see to it that education in the least is accessible and affordable for the generality of Nigerians. If there is one thing any Nigerian should be able to access, that should be quality education. At least let it be one thing that Nigerians will say that their government is doing for them. Because when you go on the street and ask every Nigerian, what is your government doing for you? What are you benefiting from the government? It will be quite unfortunate, the stories that you will hear coming from Nigerian citizens. We are talking about fund. What is the state of our institutions? When you get to our tertiary institutions, go to the hostels, go to the lecture theaters. What do you see? There are instances where you see students receiving lectures at the stadium, under the tree. These are tertiary institutions in Nigeria. And then, with this scenario, what is the quality of the graduates that we produce? And then we'll begin to talk about the decays in our society. We'll begin to talk about the youth who see education as scam. Why wouldn't they? why we say categorically education is not scam, but what have we done as a nation in this regard to make education attractive for the youths? If one goes beyond that, where are the jobs that when you are done with learning or graduating from the tertiary institution, that there are available jobs for you, rather than going back to the street, and when you're done, you'll be better, you will not beg for peanuts or transport to go for an interview